Hi everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the New Zealand Health and Safety Professionals Covid-19 response, which has been a series of subject matter expert interviews, which I've been really privileged to facilitate. And today is no different. So today we are joined by Hilary Walton, who is the CISO at Kordia here in New Zealand. So Hilary, welcome to the show.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good. It's such a pleasure to be speaking with you again. A few weeks back, we got to talk on the Business Leaders New Zealand podcast, which was
right
here on Plains FM here in Canterbury, and now we get to do this here live on the stream. So it's just what a crazy period we've recently gone through. Definitely be picking your brains on that. But I guess really let's just kick off by giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself and yeah, just do a bit of a Hilary Walton spiel. So
yeah, sure, I'd love to.
Mhm.
Yes, so when I do kind of try and explain who I am, I make a really big point of saying I'm lots of different things.
Mhm.
So, wife, mother of three, I'm an organizational psychologist, risk management professional,
Yeah.
security practitioner and expert. And, there's kind of that part of me. And then there's this whole kind of other side as well. I do a lot on social media and YouTube, and I'm really passionate about sharing ideas about technology and people, so digital culture. And so that's kind of a bit about me. But as you mentioned, my day job is Chief Information Security Officer at Kordia.
Okay.
And Kordia, a lot of people haven't heard of them, so I don't know if I should explain who they are.
Yeah, please,
Where it's a really cool company. It's really diverse, which in this environment has been really good for the company.
Yeah.
So they are a telecommunications company, business to business, but they also do things like they transmit TV and radio in New Zealand. So that's obviously a really important service during a pandemic. So really important to keep that going. We also do maritime emergency, and we've got a big cybersecurity arm to the organisation as well. So really interesting organisation and lots of different risks across all those different areas to manage as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And then, so in terms of Chief Information Security Officer, would you like to just define what that role is and what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. So it's so I'm the person who's responsible for the overall security position in the company. So that's across Australia and New Zealand. So there's a lot of really talented security experts within Kordia. And it's my job to make sure that we've got the right security strategy over the next 3 years and got the right initiatives that we're running. There's a lot of governance work in there and policy work, making sure we're running at the right security standards to meet our kind of risk appetite. And making sure that security awareness is really well done in the company, that everyone knows what they need to be doing to contribute to security and things like that as well. So in some ways, Matt, it's very similar to what you do in health and safety, except mine has a security lens across the top, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Many people probably who are tuning in right now won't know that we actually had the chance to work together, which was awesome in a previous role.
We did. It's such a pleasure.
So we were both part of the same leadership team within risk, health, safety, quality, and obviously information security, and it was a real buzz to have that chance to see you in action and also to see what it is you do. So I mean, in terms of I guess now reflecting on where we are today, obviously we've just come out of level 4 COVID-19 response. We're now into this weird and wonderful world of level 3. From your perspective, what were some of the things that Kordia first did in your role when it was announced that we were going from level 3 into level 4 in a very rapid time frame?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a real hive of activity even before we went into lockdown, as we were going through kind of 2, 3 to 4. And it was all about trying to assess what the risks are. So not we do constant kind of risk management in terms of security. So we knew the current risks, but as we were heading into lockdown, what did that mean? Were the risk levels changing? Were there new risks that were opening up? And, there was. So being really conscious of what they were and then working to mitigate those risks.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a company as well, because we knew we were heading towards work from home, we started to do, BCP exercises. So we sent teams home to work and then made sure they could, so that when they actually had to work from home, they had all the tools and things like that they needed. But it's really, because it all happened so fast, it was crazy to try and get, people that, had only had desktop computers at work. All of a sudden we had to either send them home with the desktop or, get them a laptop somehow. Kordia has these operations teams. So there's a security operations team, a maritime one, as well as a network operations team. So trying to make sure that, they can either work remotely or working out their new work patterns and things like that as well. And then there was just lots of technical kind of business continuity stuff that had to happen to make the organisation able to work in that more distributed way, which is very different from having everyone in an office. It opens up gaps in terms of security, and there's a lot more traffic on the network and things like that. So there was quite a bit for the organisation to consider.
Yeah, and I imagine it would have been extremely busy times. So I'm guessing what I've heard from others is that suddenly the silo approach of health and safety and HR, all of a sudden it became one and the same thing, right?
Yeah, I'm really pleased you raised that. And it was really interesting because what initially happened was I was thinking, right, I need to update the work from home policy. I went into policy writing mode.
Yep.
And then I was like, I should speak to the health and safety guy and see what he's doing. And, they were thinking the same thing. We need to, work out a COVID response plan policy and things like that. And we need policy, but what the key thing was coming together and going, okay, between HR, security, health and safety, and IT as well.
Yeah.
Actually putting together a pack for staff that was from all of us. And not just having it in policy, but turning it into something that's a little more digestible in terms of like a great looking kind of PowerPoint, and trying to get those messages out in different ways. But it's funny how the first response was, let's write a policy, and then it was like, oh, hold on, they're not going to read that. Let's try and make it more interesting for staff. So it was good, and it was great because it really it helped us as teams come together and integrate into that kind of integrated safety management system, which is like, where you want to get to, and away from those silos of security, health and safety, and actually coming together.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was really, really good.
Similar experience here. I mean, obviously not at the same scale, but it's that traditional, let's develop a policy, and then from there we will then start thinking about the safe work methodology statements and the operational side of things. But we just didn't have time to do that. So it was just kind of like, okay, what's going to work? Okay, well, what are the current pain points, and then work our way back. It's been such an interesting experience to see how breaking down those silos and being able to make decisions on the fly. Really,
that's right.
A trust culture, right? Without that, it's just
And on top of that as well, what I also thought was really interesting was I noticed a lot of organizations sharing different information as well, because every organization at that time was trying to reinvent the wheel and write their COVID-19 response and recovery plan, or their work from home guide, or their, this is what managers need to be doing with a remote work staff kind of material and resources. And what I was seeing was people going, have you got one of those? Or what have you written? And all these documents were kind of circling around for the good of everyone. And, with organizations that you wouldn't normally collaborate with as well, which was great. So, long may that continue after this, that kind of collaboration and sharing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's possibly at the heart of what we're trying to achieve on this platform as well, is just to try and bring in some of those learnings from the initial days, from various different spaces, different experiences, and different interest groups. It's been really valuable for everyone so far, based on the comments we've received. So from those initial days, as time's gone on, has there been any obvious lessons or any further activity that you've had to undertake as a result of the learnings and as time's moved on?
Yeah. Also, it's that we've been constantly reviewing those risks and tracking progress in terms of the mitigations and how that's going. So there's kind of been that sort of ongoing work. But what I noticed was within the first kind of 2 weeks, it was all about BCP, and the organisation was just, shoring up its network and, making sure people could work from home effectively. It was all about teaching staff to use the new collaboration tools, which were just rolled out properly. And it was all of that kind of stuff. So very, very busy. But then for me personally, what I noticed was things kind of started to normalize. And then, so I noticed that I got a lot of time to do a lot of my government's work. I was, because I've got a security strategy, which we're getting ready for the next year. And so there was a lot of work that I was doing to get that ready. And I found myself, I had time to do that, which was good because things had calmed down.
Yeah.
The other thing which had dropped off was because I also do a lot of customer work and external communication and speaking at conferences and things like that. Well, all of that dropped away really quickly. So there was kind of a more relaxed state at work. And then now what I'm finding is things are starting to pick up. So, companies have worked out how to virtualize conferences and things like that. So it's starting to get really, really busy again. And as an organization, what we've had to do, they've been really busy talking to customers and making sure they have what they need. And, the organization has kept really busy during this time.
Yeah.
And I think the whole work from home thing actually works really, really well. Not for everyone, because some people need to have that buzz of the office and conversations and things like that.
Yeah.
But in a technology company with potentially, more introverts than not, some people have just, loved it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think for the introverts, there's probably a very quiet and subtle celebration going on across the country, I reckon, with the lockdown. And I do feel for the extroverts. I'm sure they've found this period a very real challenge, probably crawling up the walls at the moment. But yeah, no, I agree. I think it's been a real interesting experience to see what it is like working from home. I was fortunate enough to be able to be recognized as an essential service provider. So that allowed me to get a container delivered to our driveway. So I'm sat in a container right now.
Fantastic. Yeah.
It wasn't possible to work from home. Too many kids, and it just wasn't feasible. So it has been an interesting experience for sure. And then I agree. I think initially, the first few days at least, it was kind of, okay, now we've got everything in order. And there seemed to be this sense of peace and calm just for a little bit. And now it's really starting to crank up. We're becoming
certainly has. Yeah, that's right.
Familiar with the tech. I mean, I've seen you, on a more personal note, I've seen you utilizing social media platforms to get your message across really effectively too.
Yes.
I know we probably didn't talk too much about this prior to the interview, but would you like to just let us know what you have been up to on that front, and maybe why as well?
Yeah. So I'm a really passionate sharer of ideas around this thing which I call digital culture, which is really this kind of intersection of technology and people, and the fact that technology and the internet, it's just allows us to do things in a much different way. It changes the way we kind of think and behave, and how we make decisions and our behavior. And I find that fascinating. I guess it's the psychologist coming out of me. So about a year ago, I started doing these little short videos around digital culture, what it is, and digital culture tips, how you build it within yourself, within your organization. Because I do believe when you're digital, it does require you to act in a different way. And the reason I did that was because I have written a book on security culture as well, but that was a really long process again, because I was really passionate about security culture. But that was a really long process, and so with digital, it has to be kind of quick, and so I thought videos are a much better way to go. So I've been doing that for a year. I'm on a number of different platforms, so you'll see things on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and more recently TikTok and things like that as well. A different platform with a different audience. I don't dance on TikTok, by the way. I do my own thing on there, just to be clear. But TikTok's interesting because I know you're on there too, Matt, but the people on TikTok TikTok are growing up really fast. Have you noticed that? Like, it's not just kids on there
The demographics
anymore.
has really changed. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it is. And because it's new, it's kind of fun and relaxed and friendly and things like that, which is interesting when you think of the personalities of the different platforms. And so recently as well, I'm starting a podcast, a digital culture ideas podcast as well, and I'm very lucky to have you as one of the people I'm interviewing on that. So that's next week. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
So so that whole being online, being digital, if I'm true to what digital culture is all about, then I've got to be on all the platforms and don't I, and be doing this video media.
Totally. Yeah, and it's really nice to hear that you are aware and have the capacity to recognize that the different platforms require a different approach. So it's no good doing a professional LinkedIn approach where you're very formal and it's kind of like you're addressing your client base, or you're addressing those who are your peers. If you move that over to somewhere like TikTok or Instagram, it's just going to fall flat on its face. It has to,
exactly,
to reflect the audience. Cool. So then bringing it right back around to probably where your concerns and where your focus is in your role, the CISO at Kordia. Are you starting to see any emerging threats or any new risks emerging? I imagine from my own experience, cyber attacks, cyber threats, is it fair to say that they're on the rise?
Yeah, so definitely on the rise. And the reason for that is because with everyone working from home, what that means is people are on their home Wi-Fis. So they're going through probably no firewall out to the internet and doing their work there. Whereas when you've got people in an office, they are behind your corporate firewall, and there's all these other layers of security, and it's a lot easier to monitor and manage because you can see more because they're all going through the corporate firewall. So yeah, work from home does create a few gaps for companies. Particularly if you haven't got that kind of protection on the laptop or computer that staff are using, and many don't because it is an investment. So what that means is, when staff members, for example, click on a phishing email by accident and get infected with something, then, they're, first of all, they're less protected, so they're probably definitely going to have that malware go onto the computer, and then you might not spot it as quickly as well. And then on top of that, bad actors, they just, they love uncertainty and fear and things like that. So they really jumped on the whole COVID pandemic thing. And you're seeing a lot of cyber threats or phishing, which is about, like pretending to be from the World Health Organization, click here to donate to COVID-19. And also lots of threats that are, perhaps COVID maps that are loaded with malware if you click on them. They're just really trying to use those COVID lures to kind of get people to click on, a document, whatever it might be, and then enter your credentials is the other thing they're really after. And because we're at home, you could argue, our staff a little bit more relaxed because they're in their home environment, in their PJs, hopefully not, but do you know what I mean? So the messaging to our staff, and which I've sort of been saying, is, be extra vigilant at home. If you're really not sure if someone has sent you a message, then contact that person out of bounds to see if they have, because there are some really telltale signs that you can look out for. If you get a message that is completely out of the blue from someone, it's like, oh, that's weird. Why are they sending me that? Or if it just doesn't look quite right. Or if there's some kind of urgency in the email, like, bring me back straight away. I need to, get this document signed, or this bank account changed, anything like that is a really big telltale sign that things aren't right. Plus poor grammar and things like that. So, there's a lot more traffic, not the same defenses as people have. And then on top of that, the bad guys are just really trying to get everyone by jumping onto the COVID thing. So it's not a great time out there and for people in cyberland.
Yeah, totally. And so, and then I guess probably more closer to home, has there been any events or anything that has kind of stuck out within the Kordia space that if you're able to even speak to that, I don't know, but
Yeah, we're lucky. I guess because we're a cybersecurity company,
yes.
we've got a lot in place to protect ourselves. And then also because we're a critical national infrastructure, we're running, the telecommunications and
Mhm.
maritime operations. We've got a lot of protections in place, so we are quite lucky. But
Yeah. Mhm.
there's still phishing attacks that happen. Just the other day, someone sent me something which was a phishing that came through LinkedIn,
Mm.
which is hard because if you're getting a message through LinkedIn from one of your contacts, it
Yep.
kind of looks like it's really from
Yeah.
them.
I had the same
And to
experience.
be honest, it was from their contact, but their
Mm.
contact had been compromised.
Right.
And it was saying, these are the cyber projects I'm working on. Click on the link, and then you can kind of help us in this war against COVID or
Mm.
whatever it was. And
Yeah.
it really does look like it's from the person, so that's
Mhm.
tough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my big message around LinkedIn,
Mm.
and basically any app, is put
Mm.
multi-factor authentication on. So
Mm.
that's that. It's also been called the two-step kind of verification process.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn has multi-factor that you can enable really, really easily.
Hmm.
And then it also uses the Microsoft Authenticator app, which a lot of people already have because there are a lot of people using Office 365. So that
Mm.
makes it even easier. So what that will do is that will stop your credentials being stolen,
Mm.
so that your account doesn't email other people, and
Yes.
in terms of an attacker kind of pretending to be you.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great
But
tip.
so MFA everything you can is my kind of
Yes.
key there. But
Yeah,
then
I love that. Mm.
even if you got MFA,
Mm.
when you get an MFA notification, so that means you need to approve it so you can get into your account.
Yeah.
Make sure it's you, is my other really key message.
Okay.
Because if you haven't triggered that, then chances are it's not you.
Mm. Yep.
So don't just approve all the MFAs that come through, even if
Yeah.
they might not be from you. Just check.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I love that. That's really, really smart. Yeah, I actually I fell for a similar thing via LinkedIn. I think getting a private message via LinkedIn from one of your first degree connections, it's just kind of, it just feels like, oh, it
Yeah,
must be legit. It's so sneaky. So that's really good advice. And I imagine it's as simple as a simple Google search would tell you if you're not sure how to
yeah,
do that additional controls. It's just to quickly do a quick search on.
yeah.
So,
Enable MFA on LinkedIn, and then
yeah,
it comes up.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you. Um, and then, so in terms of getting your communications out among your people and also to the broader security and also just the broader community in general, how are you getting those types of security messages out to the masses?
So I'm trying to use all the different mediums that are
Mm.
possible, because you never know where people are looking or where most of their attention is.
Yep.
So some of my messages, like internally for Kordia, so my messages will go out via email. Also need to use the intranet as well.
Cool.
I do a mix of text plus videos, and just try and bulletins, and try and kind of keep it fresh each time.
Mm.
I'm really lucky that our CEO is obviously a big supporter of security.
Right.
So he often will endorse sort of my email that's sent, which is great, because it just gives it that kind of extra push as well, which is fantastic. And then also, because of the situation we're in, there's a lot of coordination of comms as well. So
Right.
there's a person in the organisation, head of HR, who coordinates all the comms from health and safety and security and things like that. So
Mhm.
it does have that kind of integrated approach, which is good.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And then it was something I was thinking about yesterday, actually, is that, and I'm sure you've seen this in your space, is I've been inundated with third-party service suppliers. So
Mm.
often within the tech space, they've got a whiz-bang app or the latest software solution to make health and safety a breeze. And so
Yes.
I've become accustomed to that, and I'm able to filter through those that are just purely here because suddenly the market is red hot for it, and those that have actually been, tried and true and are actually a legitimate solution provider. Are you finding that within the security space? Are you being inundated with third-party suppliers?
Yeah, definitely. And then there's lots of security reviews that I've had to do over this period as well, because we're pushing new technology out to our people, and so a security review has to be done before something actually does go out. But then even in my personal space, like, have you noticed everyone's using social media way more than they used to?
Yep.
Like, it's just in terms of people working from home, they're on social media a lot. And if you think personally of the new apps that you might have downloaded recently, so things like Zoom, House Party, Kids Messenger, I've just seen that kind of come out.
Yeah.
And in my head I'm thinking, need to do a security review on these as well, because inevitably people are downloading these and they're perhaps not thinking about privacy and security as much, and they let the app access their contacts and things like that. So there's a whole lot of security issues that we have at work, but then also personally, because we've all downloaded lots more apps than we normally would, there's a whole lot of personal, probably, privacy and security issues that are going to have to be dealt with at some stage after this as well. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that a lot.
Yeah, it's a real interesting one, isn't it? And I know, speaking to you previously, in more of the private space around helping your kids to make smart decisions when using technology, particularly when we've got things like Messenger for kids and stuff like that. We've both got kids. Have you got any top advice to parents that have got young kids or young children who are now getting into the tech space?
Yeah, and particularly because they're on their devices way more than they used to, because you're trying to manage, everything in the house. And so my advice here is, if your child is using a device, particularly if it's their kind of own kind of iPad or tablet or whatever it is, then make sure that you are managing that device. So what I mean by that is you need to kind of set it up, whether it's Android or Apple, with one of those kind of family links or parental kind of control. So you need to enable that, and then what that will do is that'll let you manage what apps they're downloading. So if they want to download an app, they come to you and they say, "Mum, I want to download this." You have a look. You can have a look at the the appropriate age that the app is for, and whether you think it's something that is going to be fine or you don't approve of. And then so you're approving each of their app purchases. That's really important. Also, what I'm noticing in my own house is, like, my kids love to watch stuff on YouTube, like all kids do. And on that, you want to make sure that it's in restricted mode, because what that does is it filters out a lot of the spammy and kind of scammer kind of information that can come through, and it makes sure the content is age appropriate. But because Tom and I, my husband and I, are in the house as well, we're watching some YouTube also. So we have to take it off restricted mode sometimes to watch content that we want to watch. And you need to remember to switch it back on. Like, I'm kind of finding that constantly managing that as well. And it's not about them off in their room playing with the device. You need to be able to see what they're actually watching and things like that. And actually having a cybersecurity conversation with them, which I know sounds bizarre, and you don't really think about it, but when they're on YouTube, talking to them about how it works, and these links down here in the comments, if you click on those, you're going to go outside YouTube, and there also might be some bugs that can download on the computer because you're clicking on a link. So don't do that. Watching the video is fine. You're not going to get a virus or malware from the video, but talking them through that kind of thing. And issues like what information should they share on the internet? Like, what's appropriate sharing and what's not? For example, appropriate sharing is that they really like Paw Patrol, or who their favourite rugby player is. That's appropriate sharing. Inappropriate sharing is your birthday, your address, anything really private that only your close friends and family should know. So talking them through those kind of concepts as well is really important.
Yeah, some really good advice there. I guess obviously from a security space, but obviously also just from good parenting 101,
Yes.
really. Just keeping those open communication channels with your kids. When we caught up last, we were talking about how tech really was moving into the home space, and now, you know, obviously with the arrival of COVID-19, it's just turbocharged it.
Pushed us into the future, hasn't it? All of a sudden, we're kind of here.
I think so. I really believe so. Yeah, it's kind of forced us probably 5, maybe even 10 years, you know, into that future, and it's just been a real fascinating space. Now, you mentioned earlier that you're moving into the podcast space yourself, which is really, really exciting. Yes. And I just wanted to just kind of put a little bit more fuel on that and get people excited for it, because I know I am. So in terms of podcasting, what's driven you toward that space? What's been your kind of reason for heading down that avenue?
Yeah, it's a great question. So part of it was I was kind of self-aware of my own behavior. So I love podcasts. I listen to them all the time. So if I'm in the car on my own, I'm listening to a podcast. If I go for a run, for a walk, if I'm, you know, at the gym or on the rowing machine, I'm listening to podcasts. I just really, really enjoy them. And I find it really efficient in terms of I'm doing something else, but I'm also learning something, or it's, you know, interesting, entertaining, whatever it might be. And I often find that with video, I have less time to watch that, because when you're watching a video, you're kind of sitting down and you have to be concentrating on that. So in order to, I guess, reach more people, I just felt like I needed to do a podcast to meet the need of those people who like to just kind of listen to most material. The other behavior I've noticed in myself is if I'm listening to something, which I know is also a video online on YouTube, if I've really enjoyed it and I'm really inspired or engaged with the people, I'll actually then go watch the video online as well, because in video you do get all those cues and the relationship stuff, and it's a lot more engaging. So because I'm doing that kind of behavior, I think that's sort of generally what people do a lot of the time. So it's just another method to reach more people, and then podcasts enable sort of a longer conversation as well, because a lot of my YouTube stuff is pretty short because you're trying to, you know, get people's attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just one of those things, you know, Matt, when you're like, I've got to do this. I know I've got to do this. It's going to take a bit of extra time and effort, but I've got to do it. And then so, yeah, COVID-19 kind of made me go, right, I'm doing it. It was on my list for January. It's now going to happen in kind of, 1st of May. But anyway, it's going to get done.
No, I think it's brilliant. Once again, we've talked about this in the past around we're both big fans of Gary Vaynerchuk, who is kind of like the podcast YouTube video king. Really, he's just completely smashed it.
Yes.
In terms of providing as much value and content en masse as possible. And even just watching how he's navigated the COVID-19 response and what's shifted his priorities has been really fascinating, because he previous to COVID-19 was having quite structured, organized podcast meetings with people, recording those and then putting them online. Now, because you can't get that face to face, all of a sudden it's awarded him the time and space to have these kinds of conversations with people that follow him, and having really in-depth, really fast-paced questions that are specific to the person he's talking to. And for the audience, it's so valuable, because almost always the questions, you can relate it back to your current issues and concerns. It's like having a subject matter expert on demand right there in your living room. It's been quite fascinating, and like, you know, perhaps we're doing something similar on a lesser scale at the moment. It's
absolutely, and I'm sure it was probably him in my ear as I'm doing my exercise and listening to a podcast.
And
I was like, okay, I can do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Good on you for still exercising too, by the way. I had all the right intentions. The first few days I had the weights out. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get back into this. And it's just completely fallen by the wayside again.
It's I think exercise has been great, just in terms of, you know, healthy mind, healthy body, and my family actually went into lockdown a week and a half before the official lockdown because we'd been away to Australia. So I think it's like week 7. I don't know. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, we're well into this. So the exercise had to come.
Yeah, totally. And then from your psychology background as well, I mean, do you, and also the fact that you've been in Christchurch, you know, through the earthquakes and everything that followed from that, and then obviously the terror attacks and all of that as well. Do you see or do you recognize that there will be a very likely wave of psychosocial issues on the rise, both in the workplace, but also obviously within the community as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that's different about this compared to, you know, the terror attacks and the earthquake is that it's actually a shared experience for everyone, like not just New Zealand, but globally. So whereas in the earthquakes and, you know, for the terror attacks, there were people who were like directly affected, and then outside that people somewhat affected, outside that people who just kind of heard about it but not affected at all. But with this, everyone's kind of directly affected by this thing. And everyone, while we're all in the same storm, as they say, we're each in a different boat. And some boats are better equipped, you know, with this than others in terms of the type of boat it might be, or the captain of the boat, or the people. So yeah, I think there will be some really interesting, not just, you know, health outcomes that come out of this, but economic and social, and actually all of those 3 things are so tied together. Yeah. So yeah, if there was ever a time to kind of look out for each other and check if people are okay, then this is absolutely it. Yeah, and but you know, I think there's a lot of resource out there that people can kind of seek for help. You know, even I know there's kind of virtual sessions happening between psychologists and things like that with people. So you just need to make sure you're asking for help or talking to your GP or your best friend or whoever it might be. But yeah, sadly, it's still quite a uncertain, scary, and fearful time for people.
Yeah, it sure is. And then, so in terms of connecting and you know, widening our sources of information and growing community, how do we find out more about your podcasts? How do we find out more about Hilary Walton?
So you can Google Hilary Walton, that'll come up there. But also my kind of handle on social media is at Hills Walton, HILSWALTON. The podcast will be launching next week, so I will be doing some social media around that as well. So you'll hopefully see it come through those different channels. And yeah, so I'm on most of the platforms. So just, you know, go looking for me there.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Too easy. No, that's brilliant, Hills. That's great. Now, throughout this session, we have been asking for questions, but I've got a feeling that Friday mornings is probably quite a busy time for many people. But what we do here is we record these sessions, we make them available beyond. I'm actually feeling quietly inspired to also make these sessions available on podcast as well. So we'll get these onto Spotify as audio, because as you mentioned, Hilary, it's true. Everyone taps into these mediums in different ways, and often if you're listening to a podcast and you think, yeah, that was a really good session, you do go back to watch the visual, you know, the video on YouTube and other spaces. So it's definitely worth exploring that. I'm just rambling on now, but this has been really awesome just talking and hanging out.
It has been great.
Yeah, I'm really excited for your podcast series. I can't wait to be involved in that, but and also to hear and to see what you're up to in the future. And perhaps we could organize another time to catch up on this platform, maybe in a few weeks down the road, to see what you've been up to, some of the learnings are.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that we'll probably talk about in a few weeks' time is around social distancing at work. I think that's going to play out really interestingly, because, you know, people aren't going to be able to fit everyone back in the building. So what do you do then? do you get more floor space somewhere else, or do half your people work from home, and how do you manage that? So got a feeling that'll be the topic for next time.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good plan to me. So we'll book that in the next few weeks. Alrighty. Well, look, Hilary, I'll let you get back to your very busy life. Yeah, it's just send my love to your bubble, and we'll be in touch again soon.
Sounds great, Matt. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.